There is a gap between what FIFA tells you and what you can actually see with your own eyes. That gap is not a crack. At this point, it is a canyon. And the story of the first week of the 2026 World Cup is not about goals, upsets, or brilliant plays. It is about empty stadiums, empty hotel rooms, a governing body that cannot stop lying to your face, and a political circus so loud it threatens to swallow the actual sport whole. Let's talk about what happened on the ground. Because the footage does not lie, even when FIFA's press releases do. On June 12th, the second match of the entire tournament kicked off in Guadalajara, Mexico. South Korea versus the Czech Republic. Cameras panning across Estadio Akron caught something that FIFA would spend the next several days trying to explain away. Enormous blocks of empty red seats, hospitality sections with nobody in them, row after row of unoccupied chairs on the side of the stadium, opposite the main broadcast cameras. Not a few stragglers, not one quiet corner, entire sections that looked like a Tuesday afternoon preseason friendly, rather than the second game of the most watched sporting event on the planet. FIFA's official attendance figure for that match was 44,985. The stadium holds 46,000. According to FIFA, the place was basically packed. According to every set of human eyes that watched the broadcast, something was very, very wrong. And FIFA's explanation for this? Fans had scanned their tickets at the gates and were in the concourse areas during the match rather than in their seats. That was the official story from one of the most powerful sports organizations on earth. Fans who paid hundreds of dollars for tickets to a once-in-a-generation event chose to spend the 90 minutes standing in line for a hot dog, just hanging out by the concrete pillars, absorbing the atmosphere of the popcorn stand, completely voluntarily. Kieran Maguire, a football finance expert at the University of Liverpool, posted the stadium images on X with a caption that cut straight through the noise. He wrote, "Guadalajara stadium capacity, 45,664. FIFA, official attendance, or should that be called pretendance, 44,985. Nothing to see here. The sarcasm was earned, the images were damning, and FIFA kept talking. Fansided published a sharp analysis a day after the match. The empty seats, they concluded, are not about interest in the game. There is plenty of interest. The enemy is FIFA, whose dynamic pricing and algorithmic greed guaranteed those swaths of open chairs. That analysis landed like a brick because it was accurate. Dynamic pricing, a system FIFA introduced for the very first time at this tournament, allowed ticket costs to surge in real time based on demand algorithms. The result was predictable to everyone, except apparently the people running FIFA. By the time the tournament began, tickets for the final at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey were listed approaching $11,000 each. 4 premium seats to that same final were posted on FIFA's own official resale marketplace for just under $2.3 million. That is not a typo. $2.3 million for 4 seats to watch a football match. The cheapest category of ticket for the tournament started at $380 when they first went on sale in late 2025. By April of this year, the maximum price for a final ticket had already climbed to $10,990, nearly 7 times the maximum price that was promised to the public during the original North American bid process. Group stage tickets for games like Portugal versus DR Congo in Houston reached $1,000 per seat, and not the good seats. The last row, you know the one, so high up that the players look like tiny moving pixels, so far back that you are not watching football, you are watching an abstract concept of football happening somewhere below the cloud line. A man named Alonso, who lives 30 minutes from the stadium in Houston, told France 24 that he checks ticket prices every day. He said, "We are looking at $3,000 for 3 tickets. There is no respect for the local community." He had made a promise to his son. They would attend several matches. He had based that plan on what tickets cost for Qatar 2022. That plan is now financially impossible. The World Cup came to his city, 30 minutes from his front door, and he cannot afford to walk through the gate. This is not an isolated story. This is the pattern. Now here is the part where the political dimension kicks in, because at the 2026 World Cup, you genuinely cannot separate the soccer from the geopolitics. They are completely fused. Back in December of 2025, during the tournament draw ceremony held in Washington, D.C., FIFA President Gianni Infantino presented Donald Trump with the very first FIFA Peace Prize. You read that correctly. Infantino invented a peace prize and gave it to the sitting president of the United States, the same country hosting the tournament, 2 days before a World Cup draw ceremony designed to generate global goodwill. The award triggered immediate backlash. The British human rights organization Fair Square filed a formal complaint with FIFA's own ethics committee, accusing Infantino of committing 4 distinct violations of the organization's political neutrality rules. The complaint noted that awarding this prize to a currently serving political figure is a blatant infringement of FIFA's obligation to remain neutral. Infantino had also, according to the complaint, publicly lobbied on social media for Trump to receive the Nobel Peace Prize in October of 2025 and made public comments in November of that year that, in the words of the complaint, any reasonable interpretation would conclude encouraged people to support the political agenda of President Trump. The Ethics Committee received the complaint. The prize ceremony went ahead. The trophy exists. Infantino and Trump are allies. And the tournament that FIFA promised would be apolitical is soaked in politics from top to bottom. Trump, for his part, gave a speech calling the World Cup one of the greatest events in the history of humankind. He also told the New York Post in a phone call that he personally would not pay the current ticket prices. Quote, "I wouldn't pay it either, to be honest with you." The president who accepted a peace prize from the organization running this tournament then turned around and threw that organization's president under the bus on pricing, all within a few months. And Infantino, for his part, defended the prices. He cited U.S. market rates. He blamed the American resale market. He suggested that selling tickets too cheaply would only create an opportunity for scalpers to profit. And he had a memorable line for the big spenders, calling them, and this is a real quote, people of quality. Congressman Frank Pallone and Representative Nellie Poo sent a letter directly to Infantino, accusing FIFA of holding ticket prices artificially high despite fluctuations in market demand, and calling for full transparency. Then, in late May, the Attorneys General of New York and New Jersey took it a step further. Letitia James and Jennifer Davenport issued formal subpoenas to FIFA, demanding internal documents on how ticket prices were set, how seating categories were defined, how tickets were allocated to participating teams, and why fans who purchased tickets in one seating category received seats in a completely different one. The subpoenas covered FIFA's practices at MetLife Stadium, specifically, where the final is scheduled for July 19th. Fans had been reporting a gauntlet of confusion, misleading pricing tiers, wrong seat assignments, and what prosecutors described as deceptive ticketing practices. This is now a legal matter, not just a PR problem, and yet the empty seats spread. The match between Switzerland and Qatar at Levi's Stadium in San Francisco told the same story as Guadalajara. Cameras showed rows of unfilled red seats. Canada's opening match in Toronto had visible gaps. FIFA offered the same explanation: fans in the concourses. The Athletic ran an analysis of the official attendance data across the first 6 matches and found that, according to FIFA's own numbers, only 1,574 seats were unoccupied across 6 games. Anyone who watched even one of those broadcasts on television understood that number was not credible. The hotels were having their own crisis. In Houston, which is hosting 7 World Cup matches, more than any other city in the tournament, a hotel manager sat down with France 24's cameras and said something remarkable. For the opening weekend of the World Cup, they had 80 rooms left to sell out of 100, 20% occupancy, during the World Cup. This hotel had invested $15,000 specifically preparing for the tournament. They completed renovations expecting a historic wave of visitors. They got a trickle. The manager described the experience as a love-hate relationship with FIFA. He said it with the resigned tone of someone who understands exactly what that phrase means. New York's projected visitor numbers, originally set at 1.2 million international arrivals, were slashed to 500,000. And based on actual hotel booking data available as the tournament began, even that revised figure was being called optimistic. Hotels that raised room rates by 300% in anticipation of demand are now cutting prices below their normal summer rates. They cannot fill rooms. The World Economic Forum, citing hotel rate data across host cities from Atlanta to San Francisco, reported that rates were down by a third from pre-tournament projections. Oxford Economics had originally projected that 1.24 million international visitors would generate enormous tourism revenue. What arrived instead was a combination of factors so perfectly engineered to suppress international travel that it almost looks deliberate. An economics professor interviewed by France 24 in Houston laid it out plainly. The projected $1.5 billion local economic windfall depends on international fans filling the stadiums and spending money in the cities. He said the impact would be greater if Europeans came and filled the stadiums. But they are not coming. The reasons are well documented at this point. Visa restrictions and the broader visa uncertainty created by the current administration's immigration policies. Dynamic pricing that made tickets unaffordable for the international fans who represent the biggest travel spending demographic. The Iran war driving up airfares and creating a security climate that makes some international visitors think twice about traveling to the United States. ICE enforcement activity near tournament host cities, which has generated significant international news coverage that did not make the United States look like a welcoming destination. And what economists and travel analysts are now widely calling the Trump slump, a measurable, documented decline in international overnight travel to the United States that began in 2025 and continued into this year. International overnight travel to the U.S. declined by 6.3% in 2025. The World Cup was supposed to reverse that trend. Early data suggests it has not. The original economic projections for this tournament were extraordinary. Experts at the World Economic Forum suggested the 2026 World Cup could contribute more than $40 billion in global GDP FIFA, and U.S. bid committees promised a transformational economic event for every host city. The gap between those projections and the reality unfolding on the ground is not a rounding error. It is a structural failure. And then there is SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles on June 15th. The most politically charged match of the tournament so far. Iran versus New Zealand. Iranian fans face a particular set of complications at this World Cup that go beyond ticket prices. The Iranian national team itself arrived in the United States only one day before their opening match, because Iranian Football Federation officials faced visa complications due to alleged links to the current Iranian regime. The team was forced to establish its base camp in Mexico rather than in the United States, traveling across the border for each match. Iran's federation later filed an official protest with FIFA after the United States reportedly denied their request to travel to Los Angeles 2 days before their match against Belgium, a standard logistical request for any national team. According to Iran's Football Federation, the request was not approved by U.S. authorities, and the matter was submitted to FIFA through official channels. But it was what happened outside SoFi Stadium that crystallized everything the 2026 World Cup has become. The largest Persian diaspora community in the world lives in Los Angeles. Hundreds of Iranian Americans gathered outside the stadium to protest. Many carried the pre-revolutionary lion and sun flag, the symbol of Iranian heritage that predates the Islamic Republic, that the current Iranian regime considers illegal and has suppressed for decades, and that FIFA banned from all tournament venues. A Los Angeles judge refused a last-minute legal challenge to overturn FIFA's flag ban. Security guards were instructed to confiscate the flag on site. One man holding an American flag was asked to unfold it for inspection before he was allowed to pass. Fans wearing the lion and sun as a t-shirt design were told to turn their shirts inside out at the gate. Inside the stadium, supporters booed during the Iranian national anthem. Others turned their backs. And then something remarkable happened. A group of fans had smuggled in separate pieces of fabric, each individual piece innocuous enough to clear security alone. During the match, they sewed those pieces together by hand inside the stands and unfurled the full band flag while the game was being played. The image of that flag appearing in the crowd, assembled from pieces that were not allowed through the door, went around the world. Outside, the scene was equally charged. Hundreds of protesters carried giant lion and sun banners alongside American flags. Some held photographs of people killed during the protests in Iran. Others carried signs calling on players to speak publicly about conditions inside the country. Chants demanding regime change moved through the crowd. Al Jazeera reported that Iranian Americans in Los Angeles were deeply divided. Some in the crowd were there to support Team Melli, the national team, while others felt that cheering for the team meant legitimizing the government that sent it. That division, played out on the streets outside a World Cup stadium in Los Angeles, is the exact tension that FIFA insisted would not be a problem when they awarded this tournament to the United States. This is what hosting a World Cup looks like when the host country is simultaneously in a state of military conflict with one of the participating nations. It is not theoretical. It is visible. It is happening in real time, on camera, in front of the world. Pull back from any individual story, and you start to see the larger picture with uncomfortable clarity. FIFA published an attendance figure of 44,985 for a match where thousands of seats were visibly empty. FIFA's president accepted a peace prize invented specifically for him and given to the president of the host country, then faced an ethics complaint accusing him of 4 separate violations of his own organization's neutrality rules. The Attorneys General of New York and New Jersey issued subpoenas demanding FIFA explain its ticket pricing and seating allocation practices. Hotels in Houston reported 20% occupancy during the opening weekend of the tournament. New York's visitor projections were cut by more than half. International tourism to the United States declined by over 6% last year. Fans in Los Angeles who could not afford tickets and could not legally bring in their flag sewed that flag together by hand inside the stadium while the game was being played. The football is happening. Goals are being scored. Players are running and competing. The sport itself did not fail. But the institution that runs the sport, the contracts it signed, the promises it made, the deals it cut, the political alliances it pursued, the pricing system it introduced, and the reality it tries to construct through press releases, that institution is failing, visibly and measurably, in front of cameras it cannot control. The Attorney's General investigation into ticketing is going to produce more documents. The hotel occupancy data will continue to accumulate through the group stage. The gap between FIFA's official attendance figures and what broadcast cameras show is not going to close. The economic impact of this tournament will be assessed when the final at MetLife on July 19th is played, and the gap between the $40 billion projection and the actual figure will become the number that defines the 2026 World Cup in every serious economic analysis written about it for the next decade. There will be a champion. Someone will lift a trophy in New Jersey on July 19th, and Infantino will stand on the stage and declare victory for the sport, for FIFA, for the global community, for peace. And across the 16 host cities, hotel managers who renovated their properties for $15,000 will be figuring out how long it takes to recoup that investment at summer discount rates. The distance between what FIFA promises and what it actually delivers has never been this visible, measured in empty seats that FIFA says are full, in hotel rooms that FIFA says are booked, in flags that FIFA says are banned, but that fans sewed together with their own hands and raised anyway, and in a reality distortion so persistent and so detailed that it has started to feel less like spin and more like an organizational reflex, an institution that has been lying to itself and to the world for so long that it genuinely no longer knows the difference. The World Cup that was supposed to showcase America's ability to host the planet is instead showcasing something else entirely. It is showing what happens when an organization built on opacity meets a political moment defined by confrontation and tries to run the biggest sporting event in human history right in the middle of the collision.